Welcome back to the CivilNet podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Elliott. I'm delighted to be joined today by Sarah Stites, who is not only a Armenian repat, but she is also a fellow Irish Armenian, which is, we're a rare breed, and I feel like we should start our own little movement, all six of us, and kind of like a little Irish Armenian mafia just to run things in Yerevan. Things would go much smoother. People would be happier.
Oh, absolutely.
We do St. Patrick's Day parades down, like in Haraparag. I'm on board for this. More importantly, though, Sarah actually is one of the most inspiring Armenian repats I've ever met, and probably by far in this country. And that is saying a lot, but you are the mastermind behind Aregak Bakery in Gyumri. And so for context, many of our viewers I know have already been there, but for those who haven't, it is a must visit in Gyumri. It is a bakery that is entirely run and managed and staffed by Armenians with special needs. So whether that's autism, Down syndrome, I saw you had somebody with cerebral palsy last time I was there. So this is really a unique thing. I haven't seen it anywhere else in Armenia, and probably nowhere else in the Caucasus or the broader region. So tell us about this first and foremost. What were some of the main challenges when starting the Aregak Bakery?
Mm-hmm. So let's walk back to 2017. I need to put Aregak Bakery in context. It is part of a broader organization called Caritas Aregak Foundation. And our foundation's flagship program is called Emili Aregak Center. This center is a therapy center for children with special needs. So children from a very young age, from 2 years old, attend, and they're able to take advantage of free therapies that we offer. And we had a young man named Mikael with Down syndrome who had been attending our center for many years. And Mikael was interested in studying culinary arts. He loved cooking at home. He loved baking. And we offer, meals for the children at the center. So he was, as he got older, starting to help our chef on the heat. And he was doing a great job. And this inspired the team. And at the time, I wasn't actually in Armenia. So I joined in 2018. So this idea was actually born long before I came. But the European Union at the time had put out a call for proposals for innovative social enterprises that would help solve social issues. And so the team thought, you know what, Mikael has this skill set and this love for cooking. And more so, he was actually accepted to vocational college and started studying culinary arts, but there was no cafe in Gyumri, Pat, at the time that would actually take him on as an intern because of his Down syndrome. So he had been studying, he had this skill set, he had the enthusiasm, but no one was ready simply because, of how he looks and the fact that he has Down syndrome to bring him on as an intern and give him the chance to show, as we like to say, his ability in action. And so the team applied to the European Union, the EU loved the idea, and they got a big grant to open Aregak Bakery, which, as you said, is the Caucasus region's first inclusive cafe to employ people with disabilities and also their parents. And I have to say, it's already inspired a second cafe in Tbilisi called Sweetheart, which operates under the same model. Exactly.
Is it related to the Caritas Foundation?
It is.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, through Caritas, Georgia.
Amazing.
Exactly. So
did you consult for that? Went up there?
Our team consulted.
Amazing.
Actually, the woman who started that bakery, Anahit is her name. She used to be the director of Armenian Caritas.
Wow.
So it kind of stayed in the family. She saw the success of Aregak Bakery, and Sweetheart is doing a great job too. But that's a little bit of the backstory, inspired by a need. And I think the best businesses, obviously, are inspired by needs in the community, right? There was no place where young people with disabilities could show ability in action. And now not only do they have an opportunity to learn and to be employed, but also they're changing stereotypes every day around this issue of inclusion in the workplace.
What's so commendable to me, right, is since, as you know, I'm a pretty hardcore capitalist, is the fact that this is an operation that runs on its own merit. This is a profitable cafe that is not surviving off charity. This is not, you don't go there because you feel, it's like the food is actually really good. The environment is really cool. Like I love it. Every time I'm in Gyumri, it's a place I have to visit.
I'm so glad you said that, because this to me is the most important piece of a social business. And I agree with you. I mean, unfortunately, social businesses in Armenia have this reputation of being places that people go to out of pity, right? You know, like, oh, someone from a vulnerable group made this doll, I should buy it, but I don't really like the doll, you know? That's the history, unfortunately. As you said, the bakery is not only a place that shines on its, own accord. But the service is great. The food is really good. The quality is high. We are not sacrificing quality. We are placing an equal emphasis on social and business. And there are a lot of customers who come just because they've heard the food is really good. And in the process of sitting in the cafe, they learn about the social mission. And I love that, right? Because you can tell someone until you're blue in the face, people with disabilities should be included in the workplace and they have skills and they can show their ability in action. But when you are seated at the table and your waiter has Down syndrome and does a great job serving you, that forces you to change your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially, right, that you have cafes that are going out of business left and right, and this one is working. So not only that, right, it's just shattering all kinds of stereotypes that they actually can create successful businesses. They can operate. They can work. Right?
And I want to say, just returning back to your point about the fact that it's not relying on charity. Not only does it not rely on charity, but it also generates profit. And the whole model is we have 3 primary goals, right? So the first is to employ people, right, who have had difficulty finding jobs. 2 is to change stereotypes by showing ability in action. 3, and I would say highly important and something we should really be thinking about as a strategic tool for nonprofit organizations in Armenia, is to use a social enterprise to generate profit that can be reinvested back into the charitable component of a foundation, right? So any profit that we generate is reinvested back into the therapy programs at Emili Aregak, making our work more financially sustainable and also more attractive, I would say, to donors, because they see that we're also putting effort in.
Yeah. Let's dig a little bit deeper, because we kind of touched on it, and this is, in my opinion, one of our greatest national shames. And it is important to confront this. It's something that we're not having conversations on this topic. And Gandhi said, right, you can tell a lot about a society by how they treat animals. And in this case, we're talking about human beings. And that says so much about Armenian society that, we claim that we're very family oriented and so on, but there's this ugly elephant in the room, which is children with special needs, and that grow up to be adults with special needs. What triggered this conversation, and I texted you about it, right, as I was reading this thing in the United States, specifically in Nevada, there's a story of a family whose son has very severe autism and how they're just unable to get access to any kind of services, any kind of help. The father had quit his job because he's the only one who's strong enough to restrain his 8-year-old son. I mean, so it's an unbelievably heartbreaking story. And I was going, my God, because they said it was something like 1 in 34 children are diagnosed with some kind of disability. And so that's true for Armenia as well. But we don't hear about it. What's going on? We don't see these kids, or very rarely. We're starting to see it change a bit in Yerevan more and more, especially since I moved here. I'm noticing it more. But tell us about the day-to-day of a family in the regions with a child with disability.
Yeah. So I'm going to also tell you a small anecdote that puts this in perspective. I have a dear friend who also works with children with special needs in Martuni, south of Lake Sevan. And she discovered that a family in her community had a child with cerebral palsy, and she had known them for years, and she never knew that they had that child because there was such shame around that topic that they kept the child inside always and didn't even acknowledge that child's existence. And that's heartbreaking on so many fronts, right? That child is not getting sunlight. That child is not socializing. That child doesn't know what it's like to have friends. But more heartbreaking than that is that the parents feel so crippled by what the community will think, right? That they think somehow it reflects on them, that they have a child with a disability. And honestly, that's one of the really big things we're trying to change at our therapy center. We have 3 amazing psychologists, and part of what they do is just getting parents to that point where they acknowledge that it's not their fault that they had a child with a disability. So often this is placed on moms, especially in the regions. There's blame from the extended family that it was something having to do with the mom, that it was a sin of the mother, or the genetics are coming from the mom's line. There's this pressure on the moms. We see a lot of dads leaving the family.
So not only do they have a child with disability, they become a single mother.
They become a single mother.
Unbelievable.
There's a huge number of children that we serve who, live at home with single moms because the dads have left. And that's just so heartbreaking to me. And so the way I've started to see our work in a totally different light is a support center first and foremost. Even prior to providing therapies, right? We are there to say, we stand with you when others won't, when maybe your mother-in-law is going to blame you, when your husband is going to leave you, when your neighbor is going to maybe mock your child, right? I'm not saying that this happens all the time. Of course, there are many families where there is a lot of support. Yeah. We also see, in-laws sometimes saying, give the child up to an orphanage. We don't want this child in our family. Or maybe they also will say, let's say, you've got a young man who gets married and they have a child with a disability, and there's the young man has a sister, and they'll say, well, what about our daughter's chances at getting married, right? When they see that there's disability in our family, who's going to want to marry our other children? It's a shame.
Unreal.
So it starts with first addressing these very primary challenges, right? And trying to also challenge, there's just ignorance. And I say that, I hope you understand what I say when I say ignorance, just a lack of understanding, right, of certain disabilities. We were bringing our children to the public pool in Gyumri, the kids from our therapy center, and some other moms were complaining and saying, my child might catch the disability. So there's this just basic misunderstanding sometimes of what causes disabilities, the sort of, are they going to catch it or not, right? Yeah. So we're trying to address those, but I want to tell you about the psychologists and how they work with the moms. I have seen so many occasions where moms have come through our doors and they just look so downcast and depressed and alone. And they discover that there are actually other moms in the community who are facing the same challenges. So they make friends, they become empowered by the psychologist. I've seen them now, they're totally different, the moms. They'll go out together for a coffee, they talk about their problems, and their challenges. If one day a mom can't bring her child, her friend will bring, both of the children, give her a break. And the most beautiful thing, Pat, is that the moms sometimes are starting to see their children through the eyes of our specialists and see their potential, their dignity, and their beauty in a totally new way, thanks to our specialists. I love that, right? Because sometimes we think that a parent is the one who looks with the most loving eyes at the child, but sometimes the way that the society has pressured them to look at them as somehow imperfect, right, makes them unable to see that their child has potential. And we truly believe that Aregak is a place where potential blossoms, and you just need to shine the light on those kids and cultivate them like little seeds to watch them grow. And sometimes that's going to look like literally just being able to tie their own shoes or feed themselves, right? Sometimes it's literally just about life skills. Sometimes there are kids who will be able to go to school, but we also need to be very practical and very realistic and think about what sorts of skill sets are we trying to actually cultivate in the kids, right? Because we also don't want to totally frustrate the children. It doesn't make sense for many children to try and teach them to read and write. But it does make sense to teach them how to use the restroom on their own, how to ride public transportation by themselves, right? That's a dignifying thing.
What kind of state support is available in Armenia, if you know, or if you've visited these centers or interacted with them? And are we starting to see the government, the health ministry, kind of take into consideration the fact that there's a chunk of the population that is vulnerable? I mean, especially you'd think after the war, where we have 10,000 wounded veterans. So these people who weren't always in a wheelchair, but likely will be, or in crutches or so on. It's not that different from somebody with cerebral palsy and crutches. And so, are we seeing some kind of like a more consciousness around this problem in Armenia?
I definitely think there is a greater consciousness. I've been here in Armenia since 2018, and I have seen a change too. I have noticed more people being willing to just step out into the community with their children with disabilities. So I think there is a bit of a lessening of the shame. And you make such a good point, because we've seen the war. I mean, gosh, Gyumri also saw the earthquake,
Yeah,
right?
that's
in
true.
1988. So many people had acquired disabilities from that time. So, I mean, there are some things that I can comment on that I've seen. So our therapy center was not receiving any sort of state grants until 2020. And after that, the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs started actively providing grants to organizations like ours that are delivering high quality services. Yes. So as each year has gone on since 2021, we have been receiving more funding from the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. And I think that's really important, right? Because there are a lot of these state institutions. Something that we might talk about later is the social orphanages, right? Where children with disabilities are sometimes sent by their families.
If you want nightmare fuel, yeah, we can talk about that.
I have some good things to say on that front.
I have a friend who left Armenia in 2016 after committing herself to working in orphanages for a couple of years, and she swore she would never set foot in this country again, and until today she has not. Wow. She was so disgusted by what she saw in those days that, you know, and again, and this is just what's staggering to me, is that we really need to confront a lot of our myths. We need to get serious about this, and I think this is one of the good places for diaspora involvement as well. Yeah. Because I know many diasporans who are settled here and who have children with disabilities and who are either helping. I know people who are in therapy here, like in other words, their therapist. You know, our son's speech therapist, for example, is a repat, and I mean, like we should be kind of delivering that. You know, one thing that you pointed out, like now you're getting state funding, so this should be explained to the families, the extended families, you know, that like, hey, you're actually paying to help your own child or your own grandson or granddaughter or so on. And like, they are going to get support, and it's your kid, and you're paying for it with your taxes. If you're paying taxes, which in Armenia, I don't know, but you get the point. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And the reason I brought this up, Pat, is because I'm seeing a shift in the government's mentality that it makes more sense to invest in centers like ours, right, that walk alongside families and provide this sort of high quality support in terms of supporting the parents, but also supporting the children, right? Yeah. Developing their potential, actually, as opposed to investing in state-run institutions where, I mean, I want to be careful with what I say, right? But generally the results are not as good. And the family, I mean, the family is not present there, right? The idea is to keep the children with their families, but to acknowledge the fact that a family on its own is going to really struggle to raise that child. It takes a village, but the best sort of village are these sorts of highly qualified social development centers, right? So that is good news. Yeah. For me, that is really good news that the government sees that. Yeah. And sees the value we provide. And I even have a friend who, you know, she recently had a baby, and there was a mistaken diagnosis. They thought the baby had Down syndrome. And she was a little bit shocked when she first saw that mistaken diagnosis. Of course, she thought it was the diagnosis at the time. Mm-hmm. And then she thought, wait a second, but Armenia has places like Emili Aregak Center. And that made me want to cry, because that is exactly what we want to be known for. You know,
some relief for these parents.
Exactly. There will be someone to walk alongside me, because we all, I mean, you know, you're a parent. If you didn't have your wife, if you didn't have your friends, if you were just a single dad and you didn't have a good job, right? Yeah. It would be impossible. And then you add disability on top of that.
Well, for the first year of our son's life, like, he was born with complications. So all we were looking for was autism and cerebral palsy over and over and over. Exactly. Like, we couldn't breathe for the first year, and after we're like, but yeah, a lot of families. This is what's actually so heartbreaking, even about the story you said about Martuni, right? Or Vardenis, right? It's like, people with cerebral palsy, there's no dip in IQ. They're perfectly intelligent and so on. They're often treated like they're dumb because they walk slowly and they can't, but so this poor kid is fully conscious that he's being isolated in his home. Like, this is an irreplaceable human life. Mm-hmm. We often just gloss over this stuff. We're just like, you know, it's just numbers. It's not. This is a person. This is missed opportunities. This is missed memories. This is missed joy, missed heartbreak, missed growth. This is an irreplaceable human life.
Absolutely.
And it's just staggering that we're failing these people at that level, that our culture, and this is important, it is a cultural failure. It is a shame that we have to confront and overcome it. We're a country of 3 million people. We can't discard anybody and just go, no, that's fine there. We'll sweep that under the rug.
Right. And if you think about, right, I mean, this doesn't only apply to people with disabilities. Any child, let's say, in a village who doesn't have the opportunity to get a good education, that's also a waste of potential,
Yeah.
right? And I think we frequently don't look at people as beings that have potential. We forget that. But you need to come around a person and put a little bit of effort in to uncovering the potential. We have a young man named Hike who attends our center. He has autism, quite severe autism, and is nonverbal. And thanks to the specialists at Emili Aregak, they discovered that he has an amazing musical ear. And he loves classical music. So he's very picky about the sort of music he listens to and the sort of music he plays. But he's already doing concerts on the xylophone and the drums. And I love watching Hike play because he's just looking around the room as he's playing the xylophone. He's not even watching what he's doing. I don't know about you, but I am not musical whatsoever.
Yeah.
I have a disability, quote unquote, when it comes to music. I don't have a good musical ear. I have no clue how to play instruments. I'm totally in awe of people who can. And we have so many children at our center who have disabilities, right? And are looked at by many people in the community as people who have no potential or no skill sets. And they have this inner beautiful world and this ability to relate in a musical way, right? So it's uncovering what they are really capable of doing and helping them grow in that area. Just like you've been, as we've talked about, to the bakery on many occasions, and you've met our waiter, Hovanes.
Of course.
And Hova, when he was little, he had this really terrifying experience where kids in the neighborhood tried to burn either his eyebrows or his eyelashes because he looked different, right? And I look back and I think, I have no clue what those neighborhood kids are doing now. Maybe they've really distinguished themselves and they're in some sort of great job, but Hova was well known in Gyumri. And Hova was a great waiter. I've never worked in a restaurant environment, but I guarantee you that Hova is a better waiter than I could be a waitress because he is actually gifted in that area. And I think sometimes we think people with disabilities can hold a job, sure. But we forget that people with disabilities, just like you and just like I, have unique skill sets. Yeah. Hova is actually uniquely gifted as a waiter. I mean, he does a great job. People love being waited on by him, and he thrives in that environment. So I'm getting carried away.
No, this is amazing. I was going to ask you what are some inspiring stories that you're proud of, but Hova is he's on when you Google Maps Aregak Bakery. He's in like every single photo, yes. All smiling with the patrons and stuff. Yeah. No, it's really fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about these state institutions. As I told you that story, right? So I don't know how things have changed or if they have changed. Please give me some good news.
Well, something that happened very recently, very exciting, is we had an event in partnership with one of the orphanages in Gyumri, and there was an American organization that came in and helped to organize it with us, but they are promoting adoption of children with disabilities. And I know this is a bit of a challenging topic. It's a bit controversial. But after that event, there were a lot of families that decided that they wanted to adopt kids with special needs from Gyumri.
American families or local families?
American families. My vision is that in the next 10 years, we're also going to see local families.
That would be
That's
fantastic.
Ideal, right?
Yeah.
That's ideal. I know that there are a lot of people who say it's not good to take the kids out of Armenia. I say it's great that the kids have a family. Duh, right? I'm sorry. That's first and foremost. Of course. The most important thing. But as Armenia grows, as more and more people have the socioeconomic ability to adopt, I think that we will see that changing. Yeah. And I want to be on the forefront of that. It's something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think that it's not something I can talk about without doing it myself. So God willing, when the day comes, I also want to be one of those people who does. And through my own example, changes the way that people think about this. Because you know this as well as I do. There's a lot of things. Donating, for example. Yeah. There's this mentality that people in the diaspora are the ones who should do it, and people here don't have the ability to. But you can give small amounts of money. You can do your own part. You can foster a child, right?
There's more than that, Sarah. Look, in 2020 during the war, locals contributed something like 40% of the entirety of Հիմնադրամ.
Absolutely.
They almost matched diasporan donations. We have Service Titan that had a $10 billion valuation. That, as far as I know, like confirmed. We have at least a dozen new millionaires in this country. The numbers I've heard is as high as 50.
There you go.
And these are all legitimate millionaires who made their money. They're not oligarchs. They didn't steal. They didn't murder. They created wealth in this country. This is no longer a poor country. So absolutely, locals can donate, and diasporans can donate, and foreigners can donate. But the point is that this is, as far as I know, anyways, a legitimate organization. You're doing good work, and you can see tangibly the results of that work. Absolutely.
And I just feel really passionate about this, that we need to take the first steps, right? We need to be the change we want to see in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also curious if we're starting to see, like, okay, I mean, in Yerevan we do, like, I still remember at my gym there's a guy with cerebral palsy, and he comes in his crutches, and there's a special, actually the same personal trainer, she's like a trauma specialist, so she worked with my wife postpartum, and now and I can see her training him, and he's this super nice guy, and I always talk to him, say hi to him, and so it's interesting to see that in Yerevan. Now, again, if he's going to that gym, he's somebody of means.
Right.
So are we starting to see, like, even in Gyumri, even in the regions, we're starting to see a little bit of fresh air around this, people with these disabilities?
I would say slowly. I cannot speak to the regions, Gerarkunik, Sunik, Davush. I can't really speak. Most of my experience is in Shirak and in Yerevan. But certainly in Gyumri, I have seen a change. And specifically, families that are coming to our center and becoming empowered, I'm seeing them take their kids out into the community. And sometimes all it takes is to just walk proudly and to know, this is my child. I'm not ashamed. The child's not ashamed. Why are you looking? Yeah. Sometimes it's just literally the stance that you take, right? The way that you see the situation will also affect the way that others see it. Yeah. That, I think, is really huge.
Do you see yourselves, like, expanding? I mean, I would see you guys doing like what Tumo does. It's just open in every single region all around Armenia, because it's desperately needed. That would be my absolute dream, if we could make the same sort of structure. And have you been actually to our therapy center? No, but I was literally thinking while we were talking, next time I want to bring my son. I want to bring Toros to come and see the kids. You need to see the kids. You need to see the center, because we're really indebted to many donors from Austria and Germany particularly, who donated quite a lot of money so that we could build this state-of-the-art center. But it actually started in an old house in Gyumri. So just a tuf house, it wasn't at all designed to accommodate people with disabilities. The sheer number of children that started going forced the team at the time to think about expansion. And there was a man named Emil Nachbauer. So that's why it's called Emili Aregak, Emil's little son, after this man. He was in a car accident, I believe, many, many years ago, and he used a wheelchair. But he had a business, he had a family, he lived a very full life in Austria, and he saw how children in Gyumri particularly were struggling when they had disabilities. So he donated €500,000 toward the creation of this state-of-the-art center that we have now, and many people joined in. And Pat, I want to also say, the land that it was built on used to be a construction waste dump. Wow. And every time I'm there, and if I'm feeling hopeless about something, if I'm feeling, down, I look at that space, which is now truly a little piece of heaven, because we've cultivated it. It has grass, it has fruit trees, it has a greenhouse, and it's just so beautiful. It's built out of wood and glass. It's just a very state-of-the-art building. It's totally changed that part of our neighborhood, but it used to be a wasteland. And that's what we're in the business of doing, is redeeming what people have looked at as a wasteland and turning it into a little piece of heaven. And if we can do that in every region, oh my gosh, that would be my dream come true. And then we would have a greenhouse and a bakery next to each one. So we would cultivate the soil, and then we would also create this place for socialization and stereotype breaking. So that is the dream, yes. I'm not even going to continue. This is the most perfect way to stop. Sarah Stites, thank you. I rarely do this, but tell everyone where they can find you, and more specifically where they can donate. This is a project that's been close to my heart for years, and it will continue to be. And I really think, where can we find you? So we have a website. It is www.caritasardegak.org. Also, if you just Google Caritas Aregak Foundation, you should be able to find us, but we can drop the link, I guess, in the description. I'll also tell you one more thing.
which is really beautiful. So one of our mutual friends is organizing a birthday party for her son's first. And she is donating it to Aregak.
Fantastic.
She's a psychologist by background, and we've talked a lot about our psychology program, and she wants to support. So if anyone wants to join in the community and make a little birthday donation to our friend's son, we can also drop that link in the description.
Awesome. Fantastic. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for watching CivilNet.